Suit up, strap in, warm the tires, and leave on yellow. Time for the MitsuTimes podcast, presented by MitsuTimes.org, the home of the fastest Mitsubishi cars. With your host, Josh.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the MitsuTimes podcast. My guest today is Mr. Eli Jurica. He is the owner and driver of a very cool fourth generation Eclipse, actually two of them, a pair of them. How are you today, Eli?
I'm good. How are you?
I am great, man. Glad to have you on. Not a lot of people doing stuff with this platform, so I'm very excited to find out exactly what you got going on with these cars and the style of racing you're doing it with.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about it. It's pretty cool racing.
No doubt. Pretty cool is an understatement. So I want to start with you personally. How did you get into motorsports? How did you get involved into racing? What was the spark?
Well, currently I am 17 years old. I really started more about at 11 years old. Live in eastern Montana. We have got county fairs. We have this event called the Herbie Derby, which is where kids 10 to 14 years old, they take little front wheel drive cars and they have to ride with an adult, and we race around the arena, and it's just like a fun little race for the kids. And you don't go super fast, but I got myself a Toyota and I did pretty good in it and won quite a few of the races. And at the races I get to watch the adults do stuff, and a lot of them we were watching derbies, but at some of them we were watching some dirt track racing that looked pretty cool with some jumps and stuff, and I really wanted to get into that. And that is where I now am at with my Eclipses, is the adult dirt track racing. I started when I was 15 and I've been at it for this is my third year now.
Okay. So does this have jumps as well, or is it more like the oval type dirt racing like we're used to seeing?
No, it has a lot of jumps, a lot of curves. It's usually pretty muddy. They like to water it down a lot before. Sometimes they don't water it enough. You never know. But yeah, it's just every track is different. There's about 15 tracks we go to, and well, maybe 15 races, probably only 8 tracks or something. But I mean, it's pretty just whoever's there makes. There's usually about 1 or 2 jumps per track, and depending on the width of them, the racing's easier or harder. But yeah, it's not super long. I'd say probably a mile long at most, but probably half a mile long per lap. Most tracks.
So this is kind of like off-road racing more than it is dirt racing, huh?
Yeah, so the league is actually called Short Course Off-Road Racing. We just are around little towns in Montana, mostly just entertaining people for county fairs, and then we have a couple races we do for ourselves.
Very cool. Well, Eli, the fourth generation Eclipse, as I talked about in the beginning, is not a platform that most people associate with any type of racing, but more so especially off-road racing. So how did this project come about?
So it started out kind of accidentally. I never really knew anything about Mitsubishis. I've been, fairly mechanical my whole life, working on different things, mostly American cars. But I just started, I knew I needed a car for this racing, and I looked at what, the rest of the people were running. And most everybody in my racing is running probably 70s, Chevys, and Fords with big block engines or 350s, stuff like that. And pretty heavy cars, all rear wheel drive. And there was one guy there that was running a Hyundai, a little front wheel drive Hyundai. And, I don't have a ton of money, so I was trying to get in cheap. And I thought that, the front wheel drive would have some advantages. And I think we can get into that later, what those are. But I decided I wanted to look for a fast front wheel drive car. So I just started scrolling Facebook Marketplace and checking 0 to 60 times on cars close to me. And I actually found a 4G Eclipse in Sheridan, Wyoming, and ended up choosing it. It's a manual, 3.8. And it just kind of all started from there. Kind of stumbled upon them. I didn't really know that, they were not very common, like just in general out driving around. I didn't really know anything about it. All I knew it was on paper a pretty fast car, and I decided I'd try it out.
Well, we're certainly glad you did. It's really cool to kind of also hear that there's not a lot of people maybe doing imports in this kind of racing in your area. So to be not just a standout in the platform, but also a standout in your local crowd. That's really cool.
Yeah, I am the only guy that runs an import except for one other guy, and half the time he's running a front wheel drive or might be a rear wheel drive Cadillac. I don't actually know. But I'm definitely just driving the newest car of anybody.
So the fourth generation Eclipse was more of like a stumble upon kind of deal where um, through some research and what was available, that was the right choice.
Yeah. I mean, if I was looking through Facebook Marketplace and that car didn't come up, I'd probably be driving a Toyota or something else, and I wouldn't even be here. But it just happened to fall upon it, and it worked out.
I'm glad it did. So tell us about the pair of cars. What's going on like modification wise, and then what do you do to modify them to make them compete in this type of racing?
Yeah. So my first year of racing, I just had the manual, uh, and I built the car in probably 2 months. Just did a roll cage. I outsourced that custom from a guy that was in Wisconsin, I believe, and he built it. Cost about $600, and we did bumpers, which was 1/4 inch steel wrapped around the stock bumper, and then braced to the. Well, there's not much of a frame on these cars, but the most solid parts of the car. Um, we did, strip out the interiors. You got to have a race seat, detachable steering wheel. I also have a radiator sprayer, keeps it cool during the race. We have to have kind of a skid plate on the front because it will pack a bunch of dirt up underneath and like stuff it into your radiator. And that's kind of where I started. And I went out to my first race and immediately burned the clutch out on like the second lap. And I didn't know what to do really. I was scared I blew up my transmission. I didn't actually know that much about, the internal depths of anything manual before. And I ended up buying a stage 2 clutch and racing with that the rest of the year and put the clutch in it, which involves taking the engine and transmission out. It's the easiest way to do it. So as far as engine or transmission modifications, there's really none. But the car itself, just a cage and um, protection around it. And also, the stock suspension on the car isn't great for what we're doing. And I had to find a different source of suspension. So I began with just my original Eclipse and I bought max speeding rods, which, I bet if there's anybody here driving 4G that doesn't have a lot of money and they're just looking for a budget option, that's usually what they go for. They're just a cheaper Chinese suspension and they're not great. They're pretty weak, but I didn't reinforce them or anything. I just ran them. And, through the first year I was just figuring out, what needed done on the cars because things kept breaking. And then I know I need to fix this. I need to modify this. And I basically ended the first year with my first car with a reinforced max speeding rod suspension, which I just welded oil filled pipe inside of all the parts just to strengthen everything. And then ended up needing a bigger radiator. But I was at probably a race right about in the middle of the year and I burnt the engine up because I was still running a stock radiator at that time. Stock radiator in this is really not enough to handle what I'm putting the car through. It's a lot of high RPMs. So my second car I bought after I burnt up this one, I mostly just bought it for the engine. I was actually going to swap in an automatic because as it turns out, I am actually the only one in the league that runs an automatic or a manual. Sorry. Everyone else has an automatic. And I thought that was kind of weird, but there's just a lot going on in the middle of racing with dirt flying everywhere and trying to avoid getting hitting people. And so most people just opt to have an automatic so that they don't have too many problems. So I bought an automatic and my plan was to swap the engine and transmission into this car that I burnt up the engine on. And I also went out and bought an upgraded radiator for it. But I ended up just making it into its own car because the electronics would have been too complicated for me. So I ended that year with a burnt up manual and a good automatic car. And the only thing that I did different modification wise on the automatic is I went and I looked into, heavy duty coilovers. And I wanted something made for off road. And obviously nothing like that exists for this car. But I found that people did rally with the Eclipse Cross, which I've seen a couple of those. They look nothing like an Eclipse now. I don't even I don't even know why they call it an Eclipse, but I looked at the suspension for that, and the mounting looked very similar to mine. So I ended up spending $1,800 from a place in Thailand that made rally suspension, and they sent it over. And I had to do some modifications, but now on the automatic car, it's got some real nice, real strong rally suspension that's good for handling jumps and other things that the max speeding rods like. And yeah, trying to think if there's anything else. Can't think of anything immediately, but
That's pretty cool.
mostly
Those,
just trying to reinforce the cars because, I'm driving a little car and everyone else is a big one. If they hit me, I want to be kind of, protected.
yeah, very cool that the modified Eclipse Cross suspension worked out. So
Yeah, the lower part of the mounting, like if there's anyone out there that ever wants to do off-road, if you buy an Eclipse Cross suspension, the top part of the mounting, you'll have to drill different holes, but the bottom parts, everything exactly the same. So it works pretty well. My manual still currently has max speeding rods, and basically where I'm at with the cars now is I'm always just trying to keep one of them running. I'm still having issues with them, but currently right now the manual is the one running and the automatic isn't. I've done different things with them, and currently the automatic's broken.
just got to get it all back together.
Yeah, I think the ECU burnt out on it through my diagnosis, so I sent it in to get fixed just recently. I have a race coming up this weekend for the 4th of July for the 250th anniversary, and so I'm going to take the manual.
So a lot of the original Eclipse is really still intact as far as the unibody and it sounds like the engine and transmission are somewhat unmodified.
Yeah, we don't touch the class I'm in. There's 3 different classes: limited, super stock, and modified, and I'm in limited. So there's no engine power upgrades, no forced induction, any of that. So the engine's pretty much stock. I just did, when I got it, some maintenance on it. It was leaking from a bunch of gaskets, so I fixed that. I just did rod bearings on it last month because they're getting a little worn out, and these rod bearings are thin. They're not thin for this car, but for what I'm doing, they're pretty thin. So they're kind of like a maintenance thing. And yeah, other than that, and clutches, improved clutches, there's not really much modifications to the engine or transmission. What's left of the Eclipse, basically just the body. There's no interior left. One thing about these cars, they can't run without their cluster. The alternator doesn't work. I found that out. But yeah, that's pretty much all that the car is, the engine and the body. There's no, really all the trim is gone, all the plastic's gone, so it's not the same rounded shape as an Eclipse. I honestly think it looks a little better than that. It's a little more squared up, which I like that look better, but that's just my opinion.
And the original curves do look good, but in race form, it's got to look like a race car.
Yeah, it's got to look a little more aggressive,
So, Eli, what unique challenges do you run into adapting a front wheel drive car for this, off-road racing style?
I would say my main challenge, not Eclipse related, but with just any front wheel drive car. My dad's actually got a car too, but it's a Ultima SER, which is kind of a weird car. But with both the cars, our main problem has been keeping front tires on the bead and just keeping front suspension from breaking and tie rods, stuff like that. The rear wheel drive car, you have a lot more, your steering is not connected to your drive. So if one goes wrong, you can still drive without the other. If you blow a front tire, it's not going to ruin your CV axle. And, just having all of your important components at the front of the car, it creates a lot more issues. Because if both the rear wheels fell off, I could probably finish the race. But if anything really happens to the front, I got to quit, or you'll tear up a CV axle. And the biggest thing that happens is I go around a corner that's a little dry or a little too sharp, and I don't take it wide, and it'll actually push the wheel, the tire, off the bead. In our class currently, we're not allowed to run bead lockers, so it's kind of a problem. And at that point, I have to kind of quit. You can't really race these cars with a flat front tire. I started out racing with these retreads. They were only just 4-ply, and I switched to some rally tires, which aren't as grippy, but they're 8-ply, and I haven't had any issues with them slipping off since then. But still, like if you take toners too sharp or you get hit on the front, things are gonna break, and that's kind of just ruins you for that race. And so the biggest challenge is reinforcing stuff down there. I have my tie rods angle iron welded to them so that they won't break, and I got reinforced suspension or the fancy stuff, and now I got the 8-ply tires, and they're on some Jeep rims on 2-inch spacers, so they're 15-inch.
Just to complete the race car look.
Yeah.
So, as far as what maybe a lot of people don't know that aren't into this platform, which is most people. How difficult is it to find any kind of parts for this? Either maybe performance based or even just a thermostat, something just maintenance wise.
Funny enough, I don't actually run a thermostat, but I would say for performance parts, for what I'm doing, almost non-existent. For performance parts for street, yeah, they're out there. In the future, I'd really like to go to a standalone setup on the ECUs because I've had a lot of computer problems. But as far as just like general parts, like if tie rod breaks or something, Rock Auto has everything. I use them a lot, and that's pretty easy to come by. Yeah. As far as off-road parts, there's pretty much nothing. I found that a lot of this stuff from like the 2007 Mitsubishi Raider sometimes can cross over, or the Outlander. So I've used a couple parts from those if I needed to, or I couldn't find it, or I wanted something a little more heavy duty. But yeah, parts aren't too hard unless you're trying to go to really upgraded off-road type parts.
So, Eli, what's the other drivers and the fans' reaction when you pull up in this fourth generation Eclipse? Next, like you said, next to all these American V8 rear wheel drive.
I think that they probably laugh at me a little bit. They think it's just a little like ridiculous. Like, that car's not going to be able to handle this, or it's just not going to be as fast. But it's also kind of, it sounds a little bit different. So everybody in the crowd's listening to all the big V8s go by and they're growling. And then there's just me, and it's just like this little buzz that goes across the arena. And I think people think it's kind of funny, honestly. Like they laugh at it. But once they see like it can be pretty competitive, I think they like to watch it. Sometimes, like, because this car is so light, it actually competes with the V8s and them, because there you got 2 extra cylinders, but they also have 1,000 more pounds of weight, and it's pretty competitive. And I think people enjoy it because they're watching all these cars go by, and what looks like the underdog is sometimes passing and getting up to the front and leading. Sometimes I haven't been in first place too much, but a lot of second places, lots of third places, and still working on stuff. But I think they think it's kind of funny, and then as they see how it performs, they might be more apt to accepting it, or you know what I mean.
It earns the respect pretty quick.
I think so. I mean, there's plenty of races that I haven't finished, and then they're like, well, you should just get a different car. And I've had my family tell me that sometimes, but I see potential in it. And I think the amount of times I am in the front compared to the amount of times something goes wrong, it's about 50-50 right now, so I'm still pretty confident in it.
So, Eli, what has surprised you the most about this platform's performance?
Well, I wasn't really expecting like it to, like, I didn't know whether it would do well or not, like at the first race. And after I finally got some hours and some track, like going around the track with it, I found out it's like this car is pretty fast, and honestly it handles pretty good. That was one thing I was worried about. I was in deep, I'm kind of in deeper mud sometimes, and I didn't know how well it would handle, if it would get stuck, but it actually pulls through pretty well. I'm also just really impressed with the engine. I burnt up 2 engines now, which I'll get into later why that happened. It's hopefully not going to happen again, but I went and tried to rebuild them, and I was just impressed by how big the pistons in the 6G75 motor are. Like, it's a 6-cylinder, but they're huge. Like, I'm impressed with how much engine is in this little car, and I think that's why they're so fast. It's just like big engine.
Definitely, as my good buddy Sean would say, it's the Mitsubishi Big Block.
Yeah, definitely.
So you talked about different kind of tracks all over Montana. What tracks in particular do you race at throughout the season? I know you said a lot of county fairs. Is there maybe something in particular that if somebody's listening, they could come out and see this thing in action?
Yeah, I mean, if anyone is in the Billings area, there's a race in Billings. That's Montana's biggest city. At the end of the year, near October, if they ever wanted to come see this car run, and that's a 2-day race, and it's one of my favorite tracks. Um, Other places, there's a place in Glendive. It's a good track, and that's actually where I'm racing this weekend. Um, a lot of other ones are just smaller fairs and stuff. Like people can come, but most of these are towns nobody's ever heard of. Billings is probably the biggest, and yeah, that's probably the ones that people know the names of.
And then for someone who's never attended a race like this, what do you think makes this type of racing, this style of motorsports so exciting?
Well, at least for the Montana people, uh, Montana used to be really big into like derbies, and I feel like they're starting to kind of die out now. People, I think the crowd likes this racing better. It's just, especially, I mean, our cars are probably going 60 miles an hour tops. The modified cars are probably going 80, 90 tops, and, they really get some airs and jumps, and it's just really entertaining to watch. There's a lot of competitive guys, so there's a lot of passing going on. It's just really entertaining for the crowd and, the people at the races. It's Montana. Everyone's a little bit redneck, but we'll have fun. And yeah, it's really fun to watch.
It sounds like it. It sounds like something right up my alley.
Yeah, I mean, come out sometime. I'd love another member on the pit crew.
I have to take you up on it one day. So, uh, how much when it comes to this kind of racing, Eli? How much helps the car is track condition? How much of it is driving style, and how much of it is just kind of the setup of the car?
I'd say a lot of it's track condition. Some of the tracks don't have the right water trucks, or the water truck driver goes and puts way too much water on the track, and the race goes 20 miles an hour because nobody can keep traction. As far as the car goes, I think in some ways it's advantageous because all the weight is on the drive wheels, so I actually get more traction. And if someone's getting into me in the back, I can pull away from them instead of spinning out like a rear wheel drive would. Personally, I prefer to drive on drier tracks, but that's typically not the case. And then it's harder to slide around the corner. And I like to slide around the corner using my e-brake. I just grind it all in the notches off of it so I can get into a corner, pull my e-brake, and it just slides around the back, and then I gas out of it. And then driving is a huge part. I'd say, there's not a ton of cars that do this. I'd say probably 30 limited cars at most. And at most races, the most common people are 15. The other guys are just ones that show up for 1 or 2 races. And I'd say probably only about 7 of them are super competitive. And once you're getting up into those higher levels, there's a lot less about how fast your car is, because most of our cars are about the same speed, and a lot more of how experienced and how good of a driver you are. And I was for a long time the youngest person doing it. Now I'm not. There's a couple people younger than me that both actually came out of Herbie Derby too. But there's a lot of old guys that, just have a lot more track time, and I'll be behind them. And what I like to do a lot is I just like to wait for people to make a mistake sometimes and go by, or, take a corner too wide. And there's a couple guys that they just don't make mistakes. So I think a lot of it is just driving experience. And I mean, I'm younger. I need to gain more, but I don't feel like I'm too bad at it. And I'll make some good passes sometimes. And yeah, it's pretty important to all of them.
The seat time is kind of the biggest helper in this situation.
Yeah.
So you talked about preferring the drier track, Eli. What changes do you have to make to the car when the track is dry versus when it's wet and sloppy?
To the car, I got my water tank that's in the trunk. That's what runs water up to my radiator to spray it, keeps it cool. So if I got a real dry track, I'll actually run less water in that, so I have less weight in the back, because the weight in the back's mostly for wet tracks, when I'm needing some grip in the back so I don't go around a corner and just slide into the berm. But I usually like to have less grip in the back when it's dry. Like I'll put on just street tires, and then if it's wet, I'll put in some knobby tires. Other than that, not a whole lot of modifications other than just, driving style. I can go quite a bit faster on dry track when I have to when I don't have to, e-brake into turns and kind of slide my way through without trying to spin out.
And then you said before, like the rally tires is what your go-to is for this car.
Yeah. Currently, I'm thinking about getting one of those. I don't know what they are called. Basically, you can make your own tread patterns in them and taking out every other tread pattern in the rally tire so that they're a lot more grippy. Because rally's mostly on like drier gravel or hard packed dirt, so I do slip around in them. But I need the sidewall strength because the tires I was running for before, they were just street tires that were recapped with real grippy tread, but they just couldn't handle anything because they were so soft. These tires are hard enough that I've actually had one go flat once and I didn't even know because it was so
No
stiff.
kidding.
I was
Wow.
able to just run on it. And after a while they get less stiff, but I didn't even know, and it was pretty impressive. I don't think I've ever had a rear tire like either come off or flat tire or anything. Like they don't do anything. Nothing happens to them. I usually run a lot smaller tires in the front than the rear too, but it really, just depends on the track. And for the rims, I use Jeep Cherokee rims, like 90s Jeep Cherokee. They have the same
Oh, no
lug
kidding.
pattern, and the only way you can fit anything smaller than an 18 on this car is with wheel spacers. So I use Amazon wheel spacers, which probably aren't great, but I haven't had too many issues with them.
Gets the job done though.
Yeah. I when my engine blew up, I was driving my dad's Nissan and I had one of those wheel spacers on and it sheared the lug nuts off, and I bet that tire went about a mile. Track guy
Jeez.
had to go grab it, but I never had it on my car.
So you talked earlier about the front tires losing their bead. Would you say that's kind of the most challenging aspect of using a front wheel drive in this style of racing?
Yeah, I would say probably that's the main thing, and then just suspension strength and braking tie rods and stuff, bending control arms. I've had all that happened, and you don't see that as much with the rear wheel drives.
So leading up to you talked about winning a couple of heat races. What's the difference in strategy when it comes to heat races versus feature races?
Definitely just save the car. A lot of the races, probably about half the races, everybody's going to go to the A main because there's not enough cars there. There's people don't show up or it's too far away. And then the ones that they're not, they usually take top 3 to the A main, and then there's a B main. And I don't think I've ever lost a B main before, but I'm happy just sitting in, second or third in the heat race because it's not when it matters. I just want to save my car. And then as you get out to the feature, that's when I start, kicking into high gear, being a little more aggressive with the driving and driving faster. Got to keep watching the heat on the car, though. These cars don't like to overheat. Hot days really affects that. But yeah, just protect the car during the heat, and then during the feature, that's when you give it the beans.
Okay. And we talked about winning a couple heat races again. What's been your best finish in a feature so far?
Unfortunately, the best finish I've had during this racing was actually in my dad's Nissan. I've had some issues with the car, but with this car, the best finish I think I've had right now is second or third. Can't remember which one. They all just become a blur after a few years, but I think second, and that was in Billings.
Well, what's been your most memorable race in one of the eclipses?
Honestly, I would say last year, and it was more memorable because I had to, learn from it than, super big success. They're all just really fun. Like, I just have a blast. But last year I came around a corner a little too tight, and on the corners they use tires. And my car actually drove up on the tire and rolled it on its top and kind of screwed me up for the rest of the day. But that's the first time I've ever rolled one of these cars, and I just remember that a lot. I had my first race that I ever was successful in was actually a B main, and I won first place. And for some reason at that race, they were giving me a trophy, even for a B main win, which I thought was a little funny, but it was kind of special to me since, I'd just been started and it was like my second race of the year. So I would say that was pretty memorable too.
Yeah, it's always nice to take home hardware.
Yeah. We're definitely not a high budget racing or anything. No. A lot of the tracks don't even have trophies. We're just kind of guys that want to have fun.
Right. So it's more about the bragging rights.
Yeah. And there's money involved sometimes.
That's
There's
even
one
better.
guy, he won so many races last year. I think he actually paid off his car.
That's the dream.
Yeah, which I'm not even close right now. These cars are not cheap.
This episode of the MitsuTimes podcast is brought to you by Morrison Fabrication. They have over 25 years of combined experience in the DSM and Evo platforms: welding, fabrication, engine building, and drag racing. Their shared high level of expectation for quality, meticulousness, reliability, and efficiency, the performance and function of each piece, and consistency of fitment allows them to create true works of art that perform as well as they look. They have gained considerable knowledge and expertise over the years and are committed to the pursuit of continuous learning for unrelenting progress and advancements within and for our community. Find out more about their products at morrisonfabrications.com.
So, Eli, earlier you kind of hinted at it, but let's talk about the major mechanical failures that you've had. And obviously, we had this rollover. That has to be the worst crash so far, right?
Yeah, I'd say worst crash. I had another incident where someone braked real hard in front of me, and I kind of crunched the whole front end of the car in and stuck my radiator into the back of the alternator, but I ended up getting it bent out. But I'd really say the main thing is I didn't know what to do with the cooling systems on the car. So when my first year in the manual Eclipse, I burnt up an engine. And the reason it burnt up is I still had my thermostat in the car, and I was running a stock radiator, and the only upgrade I'd done on the cooling system was just the sprayer, which I couldn't keep the tank in the back from breaking. I don't know why. The straps wouldn't hold. It slid around, and it just wasn't enough to cool the car for what it was doing. I have a lot of mud flying up into the radiator and stuff. And my car overheated one race, and I didn't really understand. I've never had an engine fail on me anywhere else before. So, and I was running both the super stock and the limited class that day, and they were back to back. So everyone was rushing me to get going. And so I took my car, and it was overheating, and we put just hose water in it real quick into the stock radiator and tied the radiator hose back on with the hose clamp, and it was still so hot. And I went out there and raced it again, and the engine just started not running good at all. And then I didn't really think much of it, but there was a little bit of a rod knock when you shut it off. And I took it to the next race and did the hot laps, and it completely locked up. And all just because it overheated. Took that engine apart and failed just completely spun the rod bearings and spun the main bearings, and the crank, I took it to a crankshaft guy to see if it could be redone, and he said, I'd have to take way too much off that. So it was a really, catastrophic lower end failure, all from it overheating. So in my automatic car, I knew this cannot happen again. So I had to look for, a high flow radiator, which if anybody is going to use one of these cars for something that's not, just driving down the highway, I would definitely look into cooling upgrades. But my dad's Ultima, he just went on Amazon and spent $100 or something on a high flow radiator for it. But I couldn't find anything like that for this car. There was some for the 3G, but they don't, the hose locations aren't the same at all.
Yeah.
So I ended up having to buy a custom one. I think that cost me around $650 from this guy in Alabama. And it's about 3 times bigger than the stock ones and has nice big cooling fins. And I'd say that I don't even know, the car's original cooling capacity is a gallon. I was very surprised by it. I've never seen something that uses so little coolant. So now it holds about 2.5 gallons. I got the heater core taken out of the box and just hanging in the car for some extra cooling. And I have the thermostat completely removed since I don't ever drive them in the winter anyway. And then just an upgraded radiator sprayer. And I used an old air compressor as a tank in the trunk, so it's a metal tank so that I don't have any more issues with the plastic ones cracking. But I thought I was all prepared, and I went out to do my race, and my fans are wired in on a switch. And I knew that, radiator fans draw a lot of amperage, so I went on Amazon and I ordered 50 amp switches, which I believe these fans only draw 40. But unbeknownst to me, the switch burnt out mid-race, and I didn't have a coolant gauge other than the stock one, and I wasn't paying attention. And I was running first place in a race in Baker, Montana, and it was about halfway through the race, and I was just beating everybody by a mile. And the car just started dying and slowing down and slowing down and slowing down. And finally the engine just stopped and it had overheated. And turns out, the switch failed. So I ended up having to buy another engine on eBay, and I bought a car on Copart for an engine for the other, the manual. And both the engines just had catastrophic, like, main bearing spun, rod bearing spun. It was, unsalvageable. And so I did, the fan switches are now these 70 amp pole switches that are made for, like, real, like, high power stuff, like way overkill, but I don't want to, ever ruin an engine again because of heat. Right. And since then, I haven't had any problems, and I've got coolant gauges in both the cars that are, actually tell me the temperature, unlike the stock one. And yeah, that's where I'm at right now. But I think I finally got my cooling problem under control. And since then, my engines have been healthy, which is really good, because taking engines out of these cars is a miserable job. And it's just, I hate doing it. Like, everything's just so tight and hard to get to. Yeah. But I've done it about 4 times now, taking engines out of, like, parts cars and putting them in, or taking the engines out because I want to do a clutch job or the transmission, which last year at the end of my race, my automatic transmission failed. And I believe it was just already kind of on its way out. When I first got the car, which I bought it on a Copart auction, the fluid was black and I flushed it out, but you never get all your transmission fluid out when you do a flush. So it ended up failing. I tried to rebuild it this winter and put it back in the car, and something didn't work quite right. I must have messed something up. I never rebuilt the transmission before, but I figured I'd try it. And I bet it's just some little dumb thing, but I ended up just buying a used automatic transmission and put it in. But I also added an upgraded transmission cooler that's actually inside my car, and I have a fan running through it. So it just pumps the fluid inside the cab, and then a big old fan runs it through just to keep that cool, because these cars just don't like heat, and it shows.
Yeah, we hear that a lot with the V6s, so it must be just one of them things.
Yeah, it was funny. I like to use the 4G Club forums for a lot of, like, car questions, and James from Speed Farm Garage is, like, just really helpful on there for, figuring out stuff that I didn't know about the car. But a lot of people were telling me, well, the stock radiator is just fine. It doesn't like, it cools just fine. And at least for what I'm doing, it definitely doesn't. It's really important to keep dirt out of it. It's really important to keep it cool.
I would imagine 99% of people on Club 4G are driving their car back and forth to work every day.
Yeah. No. And just kind of shout out to James. Like, he has helped me with so much stuff on this car, and I've seen a couple of his projects. I know you've talked to him before. That rear wheel drive Clips is really cool. And
yeah, he's the man.
He actually doesn't live horribly far from where I live. I mean, relatively speaking, I think he's in Alberta, which is just north of us.
So obviously you've learned a lot of lessons, racing a platform that very few people do anything with. And, I guess the same could kind of be said for James, right? You guys are learning things that people would have never learned otherwise.
Yeah, there's a lot to learn about, just using these cars and racing in general, really.
So we talked about, going out for the roll cage, making sure it's done right, and then ordering a custom radiator. But other than that, you do most of the maintenance and fabrication all yourself?
Yeah, like all the bumpers and any metal I've added to the car otherwise, like rub bars and, reinforcing stuff. I do all the metal work myself. The only thing, I didn't have was like a pipe bender, so I outsourced the cage. And I want to give him a shout out. I think his name's Larry from, I think, Midwest Cages, and he does cages for just all sorts of different cars. If people are going to do, like, anything with, like, smaller, Japanese or American cars, Cavaliers, things like that. I think it's called Sprint Racing. Use him for his cages. He's a good price, and he gets them out fast. And he didn't know anything about these cars, and he built me a cage that worked real good. So yeah, Midwest Cages. His name's Larry. I think it costs about $600 for the full 6-point cage.
So I would imagine we're kind of in the middle of the season for this race series, Eli.
More at the beginning. I've had one race so far, and my
Okay.
next race is this weekend, and it's a 2-day race. But we go. There's a lot more races like around August because that's kind of county fair season for us now.
Makes sense.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and currently where I'm at is I was really excited because I got both my cars running, and for the first time ever, I would have both my Eclipses running, and I was going to take them both to the race and either run one in each class or having to back up in case something went wrong. But
Yeah.
I went out to test drive my automatic the other day, and it shut off, and I did tons of diagnosis and electrical work and pretty much figured out my ECU. Something had failed in there, and so I'm going to the 4th of July race with one car, and hopefully it does good. I'm hoping for the best. I think it'll be real fun, especially with it being the anniversary and everything. They usually do a lot of fun stuff at those races.
Yeah. They got to go all out on this one.
Yeah.
So, what would you say are your goals for the remainder of the season?
I would really like to win an A main with this car. Really, just like everyone knows the car's fast, but just like prove it, prove that it can make it through a race. And I think I've just worked out so many bugs and different things that are issues with this car that like it's about time I start, performing like as good as the car performs. Other goals I have, just keep it on the track, don't roll it, don't get in any big contact. I think that I've been like when I started, Herbie Derby racing, it's just a bunch of kids and we're a lot more aggressive. There's a lot of hitting in there and spinning each other out, and this is bump and run racing, but it's not really the etiquette that the most of the drivers want. So just trying to stay out of contact and just be a good driver and people like. But yeah, I'd really like to win an A main with this car.
Yeah. Definitely put in the time. Now it's got to all pay off for you.
Yeah, and we're out here on a farm, and I do a lot of other work that's not with these cars, and my dad tells me a lot of time like we just don't have time for it. So a lot of the time spent on these cars is late at night, and just long hours working on stuff. And this year I started to get a little burnt out after my transmission I just rebuilt failed, and I had to take the whole engine out again. But everything's back together now, and I'm just hoping for a little calmer season.
Well, I know you said you can't really do a whole lot because of the rules. It can't do a lot of engine transmission modifications. But are there any things that maybe you plan for the future that you want to do here and there just to make the cars a little more competitive?
Yeah, I'd definitely like to get another set of the rally suspension for the manual Eclipse, because currently it's still just running the reinforced Chinese suspension. Other things I'd like to do, I would like, more tires, better tires, like find a better tire source, something with more grip, or, even just get the tire groover and do it myself. Other than that, I don't really have any huge modifications that I want to do. I really wish they would let us run headers, but they don't. I think that would really bring out this car's power.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, basically just getting the suspension, like all the nice suspension, put in both the cars, and stop dealing with the crappy ones that break a lot and I always have to weld on them.
Once you cut down the downtime, I feel like that'd be very beneficial for both cars.
Yeah.
So let's say, Eli, I'm listening to this. I have, an Eclipse of some generation, and I'm considering going out and maybe trying this. What advice would you give me starting out so that I could be as successful as possible?
I would say, protect the car, reinforce any areas that you can. If you're gonna, you're gonna be getting in contact, do everything you can to keep it cool. Upgrade the radiator, take the thermostat out if you're just running it in the summer. I don't know for sure if the radiator sprayer is necessary. Sometimes I think it's a problem because it sprays through and might cool down one side of the engine too much, but I haven't really had any big issues with that. But yeah, keep it cool and protect it where it needs protected. And that's like the two main things that this car needs.
And then, Eli, let's say that, this season, once it comes to an end, you hit the Montana lottery, even though you're not old enough to play yet. What would your ultimate build for these cars look like to be as competitive as possible in this type of racing?
I would definitely go with like it has to be the stock engine, but I see on Speedway Motors they actually have like a 6075 like crate engine, and with quite a few like performance upgrades, and then just reinforced like pistons and rods and like just everything reinforced and new. Like I would definitely put one of those in. And then a brand new automatic transmission for the automatic and a nice like high quality clutch for the manual. Right now the one I have in it, it's like $900 and it's okay, but there's a lot more expensive ones that would be better. Then obviously full set of, good suspension and I have a pretty nice race seat already. I'm happy with that. Maybe some better tires. And yeah. Ooh, a paint job. I wouldn't mind a paint job. My automatic has a paint job, but my manual right now doesn't because I'm not very good at that stuff.
You almost need like a wrap or something where you can.
Yeah, I looked into wraps and a lot of guys have those. It's just I don't know of any wraps that would fit this car very well that but if you had unlimited money, sure.
Yeah. It's almost like one of those things where if it gets beaten, banged up so much, you want to just be able to unskin it and reskin it.
Yeah, and honestly, like at some point, like the car, like my automatic, I've drove a lot more than the manual just because it's just had a lot more track time and it's getting pretty beat up. I mean, you can make the car look really pretty, but at the end of the day, in 2 years, it probably isn't going to look that good. And I have no sponsors right now. I pretty much pay for everything myself, just working. And so I don't really have any sponsors to put on for a nice paint job. I was really wanting to just get one sponsor that wanted to do like a paint job for me, like give me the paint and then I'd make the car like just their company's themed, but I haven't got anybody that was super interested. And I mean, honestly, like the businesses we have around here, mostly agricultural, and there's just not that type of crowd at the races. So it's hard to find sponsors that are sponsoring you for anything other than, they like you or they just won't feel bad for you. But it's all right.
So you talked about, having these mechanical failures and now the autos, acting up. What kind of keeps you motivated to keep racing these cars and to keep pushing them and to want to, keep doing these upgrades and making them as competitive as possible?
Let's say, there's been a couple people, my grandpa's told me, he's like, just get an old Chevy, quit dinking with these cars. And I like it because even though it's expensive to do this stuff, I feel like I'm still saving money compared to what other people are doing. These cars are just a little cheaper to acquire, honestly. And then I've seen the car's potential. I know this thing's fast. Like it whips your neck back when you step on it. And I've been in the lead. I've been chasing people down. I know the potential this car has, and I just really want to see it fulfilled. And that's kind of what motivates me to keep going because, it is a lot of.
Well, Eli, where can people find and follow you on social media so they can see more of what you're doing with these cars?
I was thinking about maybe starting making YouTube videos or just recording the races. We have drones, so maybe putting that up there. Currently, the only social media that I have that I do anything with the car on is my Facebook, and you can just find me under my name, Eli Jerica. I posted a couple reels the other day about the manual car, just kind of going through what I'd done at it, let people take a look at it. So yeah, if I do get some interest, I might start maybe making some videos for Facebook or YouTube, and people can just look and see what the builds are like.
I definitely, I support the YouTube channel theory because, being out there and doing something that nobody else is doing, that's what I love to see.
Yeah. And I'd love to start a YouTube channel. I just don't really know how, any of that works and just don't have a lot of time. But I think if people were interested and I could be somewhat successful in it, then I'd definitely be interested.
Well, Eli, at the end, I always give people a chance to give a thanks or a shout out to anybody who's helped get the car where it is, anybody who's helped get themselves where they are. Is there anybody that you want to give a thanks or a shout out to?
Yeah, I just say thank you to my family, especially my dad. He helps me, work on cars and he's taught me a lot of the stuff I know about him. And my family for being there at my races and my brother for being my pit crew. Sometimes I don't get my whole family there. My girlfriend comes and she's a great pit crew help, even though she probably don't like it very much. And yeah, just my grandpa, my whole family, they really help me out and they support me and they come to a lot of my races. And then as far as, figuring out issues with the car, James at Speed Farm Garage, I mean, he's great. He's helped me with a lot of stuff, and is probably going to be the one that helps me. And I know he's working on a standalone project right now for getting some standalone stuff out for these cars, and probably have him help me with that down the road. Yeah, that's about all.
Okay. Well, Eli, I know we had some technical difficulties. I definitely appreciate your patience, and I appreciate you coming on here and telling your story. I hope that we can motivate some other people with these eclipses to go out and to race them, to get something out of them, and to anybody else who listening that go out and try this type of racing, this short course off road racing.
Yeah, I mean, even if you're going to be, on road, like I don't know if these cars are getting rare, but I just never see them out. And I just think they're just like such a cool car. And I honestly just want to get one to drive myself around. But yeah, I really like to see more people, doing stuff with them, and they become more popular. Everyone always talks about like the WR Rex or, Super Toyotas and whatever. I never hear anything about Mitsubishi. I didn't even know like this car existed. So I think it'd just be really cool if other people started doing more with them, and might help me get some more parts.
I definitely agree with you there. Well, Eli, that'll do it. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the MitsuTimes podcast. Check out our Instagram and Facebook for daily updates. Get added to our list by going to MitsuTimes.org and clicking Submit a Slip. Thank you to all of our sponsors.